Welcome to Kingdom Wholesalers, where faith meets finance and purpose powers profit. We're building something new, a bold community of Christian wholesalers committed to advancing God's kingdom in financial services. Join us as we reveal God's work on Wall Street and discover your path to participate so your life will echo into eternity. Today, we sit down with Jason Baker, CEO and partner at the Paterson Group. We're going to explore how faith, clarity, and strategy intersect to shape lives and organizations. We also have Scott Hitzel joining in. With 30 years of proven results in large church and executive leadership, he is now the VP helping scale the Paterson Group. We hope you catch the vision and join the movement. All right, Jason, probably the most important question we're going to get off the table first. You were a former NFL player, specifically a punter. I think I and maybe our audience wants to know, what was the longest punt you ever had?
Well, sort of embarrassingly, in the same game, I had the longest and shortest punt of my career. So I don't know if that nullifies it or not, but I think it was 2007 or 2008, we were playing at the time, Washington Redskins. I was playing for the Carolina Panthers. I was in really, really bad shape. The night before, I had at our team snack, I had, like I always do, I love chocolate chip cookies. Who doesn't like a chocolate chip cookie and a glass of milk? Well, back then, for some reason, have you ever been to like a hotel where they have like the pitcher and it's kind of in ice and it's like milk, not in the cartons, right? Anyway, I pour myself some of that. May or may not have been cold. I don't know. In hindsight, ate a cookie, drank some milk. The rest of the night, I am head in the toilet, just everything's coming out of me. I'm an absolute train wreck. And I'm a train wreck all the way through the game. Like I can't stand up without like being nauseous. And so one of my punts goes for 75 or 80 yards, and the next one gets tipped and goes 9. So a tipped punt going across the line of scrimmage is just called a punt. So a block punt go across the line of scrimmage is no longer called a block punt. That's just a punt. And so the high of the 75 or 80-yard punt went away pretty quickly because the average on the two of those was just kind of back to normal.
That's awesome. I love that.
I think we're back to back. I think it was like right back to back. There was in all of my career, that was the longest and shortest, and they're right next to each other.
Wow.
Anyway.
That's so funny.
Oddly, that we don't try to kick them far. Believe it or not, like the intent, it's more like golf. You hit the shot for the situation. So there are some scenarios where you're trying to kick it as far as you can, and those are fun, but much of the time you're actually trying to position the ball, and it's less about how far. But
yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, so your journey, though, from the NFL to now leading strategic transformations at the Paterson Group, it's pretty remarkable. I think if anyone knows the history of this organization, it's definitely doing some important work and some meaningful work. But for you, what first stirred you in the desire to help others around clarity and purpose, beyond the playing field into now the professional field?
That's a great question. So it found me, probably like everyone else on our team. They encountered Paterson as a consumer. And so I was assuming that I was approaching the end of my first career, and a gentleman named John Putnam, who I'm still very close to, who at the time was our National Christian Foundation partner for my wife and I, we said, hey, he was kind of watching me do this sort of vocational do-si-do as my career seemed to be winding down, and try a little bit of this, nope, try a little bit of that, nope. And he said, hey man, time out. Like, I'm not going to watch you spin your wheels. He's like, I want you to call this guy. And he hands me a business card of a gentleman in Louisville, Colorado, and says, you need to call him. I don't know if you'll be able to get on his schedule, but if you can, you need to go see him, and you need to do whatever he tells you. So, and when you're in somewhat of a moment of desperation, that seems like a really logical thing to do. So I call him, and by God's grace, a few weeks later, I'm in his office. It's in the basement of this really cool house in Louisville, Colorado. His name is Pete Richardson. And he takes me through a thing called a life plan. And so I spend 2 days in his basement, and he basically does this very caring, graceful surgical procedure on my soul, if you will, and harvests all of this really, really profound content out of me. So this is not a prescriptive exercise. This is actually a Socratic exercise he takes me through, where if I'm being totally honest, in that moment, since up to that moment and since I was 5, I would say the value that I created in the world in my head was directly related to a scoreboard at the end of a field somewhere. And if you weren't contributing to that, you could be sitting there asking yourself some hard questions about like what in the world am I like, I think I'm 34 years old at the time. Like, did I just hit the top of the roller coaster? Is it downhill from here? Like, it can't be, can it? And so there's fear, there's a lot of stuff in that. And I was probably pretty anxious about my ability to have like a real application of value in the world beyond football. I probably wouldn't have said that out loud because I was well educated. I had a bunch of cool experiences, and most people thought I had my stuff together. But I was probably like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. And in that one experience with Pete, I literally went from fearful about tomorrow to kind of excited about it. Like, and there was no magic trick. It was just me being able to see truthfully like what my identity was in Christ, how I was built, what I was equipped to do, what those real core talents that he equipped me with, and where I felt called to use them. Helped me get my head wrapped around how to make some good decisions, make sure I was taking care of myself, all those kind of things. And I walked out of there like, hey man, like next step, let's go. Whatever it is, let's go. I'm actually excited about it. I don't know what the financial value of that is, but it's a top 5 adult moment in my life, going from I don't know how excited I am about tomorrow to I can't wait to get to tomorrow. And so that was a really profound experience. And part of that was some vocational gating, like what might I do? And as I was processing that, it actually came to light that doing some consulting work might actually fit me. Like, how could I actually help other people have some breakthroughs? I was wired that way. There's a bunch of evidence in my work with Pete that demonstrated that could be true. And he actually confronted me on it afterwards and said, hey, like, I've done a lot of these, and I think I know what I'm looking at. You might consider this. And he actually presented the concept of what if you use this tool inside of this practice you have? So that's a really profound idea. And so full circle moment, I go from being a consumer, and then we actually hired Pete to serve a couple ministries that matter to us. So I did a life plan with him. We actually hired him to do StratOp, the other service that Paterson does, on a couple of ministries, and that went really well. And then I just felt highly convicted to go equip myself with these tools and run a private practice with it. By God's grace, that private practice was successful. And later on, Pete, who actually at the time was the owner of Paterson, he's the second generation steward of Paterson. Tom Paterson was obviously the founder. He and I got into a conversation, and he just said, hey man, I'm pretty tired. And he said, what would you do with this thing if it was yours? And then it created an opportunity for us to have a stewardship conversation and ultimately a transaction. And at my request, he actually remained part of our group, and it's a really awesome thing. We got a resource that he is for us today. But so I got to it by it sort of found me. It was a solution in my life that then I thought, man, it'd be pretty cool if I could help. You know, it's a 53-year-old organization. My goal is to help it live for another 53 years if I can.
It sounds like you had this moment where it's not to say the past was wrong. It actually led you to this point of realizing there was more to the story. And so what particularly though from that shifted to you changing your life to now moving to wanting to see this change the lives of others? Because I think there's something interesting there to go. You're not just helping yourself. Some people stop there, but you've said, no, I've got to give this away. What is it about that?
Great question. So one of the most profound things that happens in life plan work is the discovery. It's not prescribed, is the discovery of your purpose. And the way we define that is if you completed the sentence, I exist too. God created you for something. He clearly states in scripture, he did not create you randomly, haphazardly, and you are not a cookie cutter version of a bunch of other people. Like you are incredibly unique, and he has designs for you. Being able to put words to that. There were a couple more moments in the life plan work where like it starts pulling tears. And when Pete helped me land on the language around my purpose, it was pretty profound because in the moment at 34 or 35, wherever I was, for the first time in my life, I heard it said out loud and I could see it on a wall. The thing that I have felt in me my whole life. Like if these kind of things were happening, I was highly energized, felt like the tracks were greased, things were moving. And that was pretty interesting. There's other things that I felt compelled to do that are taxing, right? And you start realizing, but in this moment, I was able to actually see that I exist to connect people with resources that allow them breakthroughs. And there's so many ways that that translated in my life before that I could now see that I couldn't see before because I wasn't looking at it through that lens. I could now see all that. And so you're saying, well, what am I doing now? That is actually all I do every day. Is I was like, this thing's going to unlock individuals, couples, families. This thing will unlock them. It'll allow them breakthroughs in ways that no way I could do on my own. I would never create this. But this tool Tom created that Pete stewarded that's been passed to me, like it's a way to go like launch people into what they're supposed to be doing. The StratOp work does the same thing in organizations. It is so fun every day to wake up and we go do this really hard, rewarding work with people that help them move from this place of confusion or lack of clarity or being stuck, unlocking them and getting them moving to where it is that they feel called to be. They get to discover that, and then we can actually tangibly move them. I just waking up doing the thing that I think God designed me to do. There is no way the day I walked out of the locker room for the last time, of course, I didn't know at that time it was the last time I'd walk out, but if you would have described me 10 years later to that guy, he wouldn't even understand what you were saying. Like I would have been like, man, I don't even know why would I even gravitate? I have no idea what that is. And interestingly today, if you asked me to trade it and go back, I would be like, man, I think this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like, I don't think I'm supposed to, this is it. This is the track. I'm highly convicted. This is the track I'm supposed to be on. Are any of you guys familiar with Jamie Winship?
Mm.
He wrote the book Living Fearlessly.
No, I'm not.
No.
Anyway, it's worth a look. He also does. I listened to him on a podcast. A client actually referred him to us because he's like, "This is what it felt like. What you guys do felt like this." And he talks about how really fascinating story, but he just talks about like for some reason when I was very young, I had clear conviction on what my identity was in Christ and why I was here. And I just for some reason have had the ability, or God blessed me with the ability to just live in that space. And when you listen to his life story, you'd be like, they could make 5 movies out of this. And how much like really, really awesome highs, really, really, challenging lows. But the way they walked it out, you're like, man, that's actually the sort of like life I think he's calling us towards. And it's just an example of a guy who identified it. I actually don't know if he was a life plan client. I'd love to claim that. I don't know if he is, but it made me go to his book, and reading his book, actually, it was him just diving into like what happens when somebody just goes, discovers what they're supposed to do, and just lives in that space.
I love that.
I actually feel like that's what I'm doing. So
yeah, no, I love that too. I just reminded as you were talking, like for some reason, I've just been in this passage of Luke 24, post-resurrection, Jesus, and you got the disciples sitting there at the end, and they're still confused. They still don't understand. In fact, we know they ran to the tomb, and it says they still did not understand that Jesus had to rise from this. Like, how many times? So then Jesus walks through the wall, shows up in the room, and they're terrified and thrilled at the same time. There's this mystery of it's Jesus, but yet we're totally terrified. Is it a ghost? And Jesus gives them that revelation. But at the same, what I'm struck by is what you're getting at is the person, the purpose, the whole plan, and how he's wanting to advance the kingdom. None of that changes. He actually revisits the entire thing. Hey, it's been about me the whole time. We're going to preach this gospel to the ends of the earth, and you are going to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And by the way, the promise of that Holy Spirit is going to help you do it. Here's what's interesting, though, is he didn't take the pen then from that room and write all of those disciples' stories of how they were going to do it. And so we look at how they lived their lives out. Some died as martyrs. Some got abandoned to islands. Others, carried the torch and became missionaries that forged movements that wrote, parts of the Bible we read today. And yet it all looked like the same, and yet it looked different. I think that's what you're getting at here, Jason. You're just saying, no, there's actually a unique role that I play in co-authoring this story. Yes, we're mandated as followers of Jesus to show up, but we have a role to play in how we do that and what that story looks like. And Mark, I'm reminded of you and I hanging out a little bit, but you went through a process. I'm not sure when that happened, But towards the end, you had a real clear, I exist for, and there were three things that you were able to share with every client, every advisor, even people in your church communities about what you were doing. Share with us a little bit about that because I think it relates.
Sure. Actually went through a life plan with Tom Paterson directly. And when we talk about one of the tools that they use in a life plan, I started to follow these 5 F's. And it became very clear to me that I could articulate to my clients who were financial advisors a connection piece to them for their purpose and mine. When that opportunity clarified for me what the three main things were that a financial advisor does, it became a complete game changer on the way I communicated with my clients, financial advisors in general, the way I represented my company. And those three things were: you help people retire with dignity, you help people educate their children or their grandchildren, and you help people leave a significant legacy if they want to leave that through philanthropic giving or whatever that might look like based on their net worth and their needs. And once we were able to codify that and bring that into that sharp focus, purpose just abounded in that. And I think, as Jason mentioned earlier, that, the Paterson Group, his team, those that work with him, they're the black belts at it. And the beauty of it is they all went through the process themselves, which got them to where they were.
I would also add into that, as Mark and Jason were thinking and talking and sharing the whole essence of whether it be my story or thousands of others, it's really understanding this integration of my personal purpose and the professional mission that I'm a part of, and how that integrates, and how you can have an integrated life and your soul work can be a part of your profession, whether that be in the for-profit or nonprofit space, and that you can integrate. And I think that's something that I've witnessed as I've known Mark now over 20 years, and we've partnered together in various things. And I've seen Jason doing that so effectively, to see someone come alive at work, not just because it's work, but because it's their individual purpose, it's their passion, and to find that mix can accentuate the human soul as well as the mission of the organization. And I think that that's something that Paterson sits in a very unique space of, where you can find different entities that'll do a strategic plan, but then that will also pull aside the executive team or the CEO and their family and their marriage, and actually work with that to create an operating system and a rhythm of health that it's all then in sync with one another. And when you find that, you have found something that is noble.
Thank you for sharing that, Scott, because I think it leads into maybe us unpacking more specifically some ways that this might help the financial wholesaler, which clearly is the audience that we're targeting, trying to see them, activate them. And this is really hitting on a specific opportunity I think they could take advantage of. But you use this word integration or integrated. And it's an interesting word because as followers of Jesus, we would say, yes, it's always been integrated. There is no secular and there is no sacred, right? So we would say there's a level of integration there that we believe is wired into God's design. But there's this human integration around intrinsic and extrinsic motivation that DC writes about, and the difference between introjection and integration. And this idea that the more integrated we are, the more we're willing to sacrifice for the very thing we want. The more introjected we are, the more we're attaching to something that's more coming from us from the outside. And over time, whether it's through compliance or defiance, that cost becomes punishment. So when we're integrated, the same cost to the same destination is sacrifice. When we're not integrated, it's actually death, ultimately punishment that leads to death. And I think that's what you're talking about. If we can come alive to that deeper sense of what were we made for, what's the fire in us that we're willing to stake our claim on, we come alive and bring value to the world, probably the way God actually designed us. What do you have to say about that or add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so we sit in a space today, the I'm saying trendy term. I don't mean it to sound like it's a trend, but the trendy term right now is human flourishing, right? Everyone's talking about human flourishing. I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago in a kind of an intimate dinner in Washington, D.C. There was the gentlemen from Harvard and Baylor who are leading this big global study that I think a lot of our government officials are staring at, like, what does this mean about this research around human flourishing? And they're doing this big, huge thing. And I kind of want to stand up in the room and be like, guys, I think we've been doing this work for 50 years in the household level, not the global level, but human flourishing to us is, do you know why you were made? Do you know what you're supposed to be doing here? Do you understand how you're equipped? And are you acting on that? Like Jamie Winship's a great example. Others are like, I'm pretty sure the recipe to human flourishing is go do the thing you were built and designed to do. And I think God sort of told us, if you'll do that, I got you, it's going to work out. I don't know if it's more complex than that or not. I'm maybe dumbing it down too far, but I know in our flesh, we will get that twisted up pretty quickly. We'll chase things we don't know. And if you're thinking about it, if you're Satan, if you subscribe to the concept of spiritual warfare, I suspect many of your viewers will, it's probably not that challenging to just get that a little cloudy.
Well, Jason, it's interesting you say that. I was just reading some stuff on this whole phenomenon of super aging, right? Which would tie into the whole idea of human flourishing. And one of the things, and this will not be surprising, is the doctors that are writing these books on super aging and stuff, where they actually do real research, not where they're making a bunch of stuff up, is that when someone gets diagnosed with something that's real, the likelihood of them to fix it goes way up, right? The idea, like, hey, you got heart disease, but if you can lose 50 pounds and do this and this, you can do it. And 3 weeks ago, if I told you to do all those things, but you didn't know you had heart disease, you would never do them. But now that you know, the propensity to actually make the changes and move along and to do that goes way up. And really what you're doing is, in a sense, you think about Paterson and what you guys have been doing for 50 years, is you've been doing a version of a diagnosis.
I actually think the contrast of my first act and my second act, if you will, they probably would have given a chance professionally. They would have traded places with me. The gig I had in my first act was a pretty cool gig. I recognize that. Super blessed to have done it. Interestingly, though, how I feel about what I'm doing today and the clarity of why I'm here and what's going on, I wouldn't trade it for that today, right? I wouldn't go back, because this is actually the human flourishing thing is actually happening in my life today. It wasn't then. The outside world would have been like, man, that's awesome. And today they look at me like, oh, you kind of run a small business. But I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing today. There's no way I'm swapping those two today, right?
Let's hone this down to the financial wholesaler here. So what we're saying is, it's not enough to just show up with the shiny thing, the widget, whatever value you may be bringing in based on your product, based on your secret strategy. I mean, those will get you so far. They may even get you in the door. But what I'm hearing us say is the individual human, so in this case, the financial wholesaler, carries a unique value creation mechanism that if they tap into that and show up in the room, they're showing up their unique way, their unique ability, the way they were designed by God. And we just believe when we do that, there's favor, there's life, there's mutual benefits going on in that, because that's what flourishing is. So I know some of the powerful themes, there's probably many around the Paterson Group, but there's faith, there's leadership, there's clarity, and obviously those probably at any given time, even on a particular day, we could all say we would love more of that. How do those show up in your work? And then maybe, help us know, how do we bridge that into the financial wholesaler today who's, trying to do their work and bring value to the world?
Think about your career as a wholesaler. I'm going to just use some averages. Again, these are more proof points from the career I had at the asset management company that I was at. But our average wholesaler had 2,500 advisors that they called on. And of those 2,500, roughly, some more, some less, you had about 300, call them your A clients, your platinum clients, whatever you want to make that to be. So here you have this group, the universe, and then you have this group, your target, those that based on the firm that you're currently raising assets for, what their ideal client looks like. And you know that better than I would. So just kind of put that in play for yourself. The first thing I would say is, why wouldn't I do one of these for myself as a wholesaler to allow me the opportunity to think about how I can live a more full life from my fitness standpoint, my family standpoint, my faith standpoint, my fellowship connection to the community standpoint, and my financial standpoint. So that's that part. And then once I do that and I invest in myself at that level and walk through something like that potentially, and then I would have this in my bag, if you will, different than having my value portfolio or my growth portfolio or a particular ETF or a particular separately managed account or mutual fund. But now I would have this arrow in my quiver or this piece in my bag that's going to differentiate me from all of my competition, because I'm going to be able to talk to these advisors about something that's important to them, their clients, their practice, those they built on their team. And I'm buying in it with a vested interest in them because I care enough about them to want to see them succeed. So I'm going to bring that to fruition for them with resources like the Paterson Group, proven resources over a 50-year period. For me, in a world where a lot of people would say, well, all those value portfolios are the same, or those growth portfolios, or those fixed income portfolios are all the same, that differentiation is the thing that allowed me an opportunity to be extremely successful and live a significant life over a long period of time and have significant relationships now that I'm on the other side of it and have retired from the industry with a lot of really wonderful people that are doing a lot of really good things for others. And this is a tool, an instrument, and a lifestyle set that if you apply it properly, that would give you an opportunity to do the same thing if you were going to take that to your wholesaling network and the people you're ultimately going to work with in the financial services market.
And to piggyback off of what Mark is saying, I would just say that to make sure that all of us are getting out of bed, whether you're a wholesaler or you're one of the advisors, and just say, I understand my purposeful impact that I'm going to make today. I don't want to just make impact, but I want to make purposeful impact. And that is actually the mission statement of the Paterson Group. And so there's a great difference. And as Mark was bringing up the relationships and understanding, if I can truly know my clients in a way that's deeply intimate to them to help them succeed, that their mission becomes our mission, and that we can collaborate together and understand each other beyond the surface level, and to ensure that we're walking. We might not always see eye to eye, but we're going to walk shoulder to shoulder here. And we're going to walk hand in hand because we understand one another more. We understand what we're going towards, what we're going for, and the why behind all of that. And I think that that's a very unique differentiator, just in the various settings, in the various industries, when you can empathize with someone, not just sympathize with somebody, but you actually know that person to the depths where you can talk about, I see your talents thriving here. I see if we adjusted this just a few degrees over here, we could better position you to win. And by having the clarity of what your core talents are and what your values are, and to be able to even articulate, these are my top 5 values. And right now, one of those are feeling violated. And I want to have that open dialogue amongst us so that we can actually make true purposeful impact and progress forward, not only in this relationship, but in the cause that we're going towards.
All right. So we love stories and we like to end usually with a story or two. So give us a story that, represents the impact and the meaning of the work around the Paterson Group.
So one of the really cool things that happened, like physically happened when the transaction at Paterson took place. So 3.5, 4 years ago, when we actually formally made a transaction where we became the owners, there was actually physical on top of the business. There were physical contents of things that were part of the business that we were able to acquire. And we actually have a bunch of like handwritten notes and letters. And like at one point we opened up the Ingersoll Rand 1985 to 1987 strategic plan, handwritten on spreadsheets. And like you're scrolling through a Fortune 500 or Fortune 50, whatever they are today, that Tom was doing with them back then. It's just really profound. But one of the best things was a series of letters in communication between Bob Buford and Tom Paterson. And it was sort of like buddies kind of going back and, poking at each other. But Bob had a really impactful experience with Life Plan. And it was like, I think there's a population of people out here going into the second half of their life that I want to go impact. And then he went and started this movement around halftime and all the content that's been written on that. And so it's really cool to see that. And he would acknowledge the fact that switch was flipped when he went through, he was at his own halftime and went through Life Plan and was like, my gosh, there's this whole thing in front of me that I can go serve. And that's just one of those the sort of movements that sprouted off of this type of work that we're very proud of.
And I'll throw in one as well. When we talk about movements that can be made, and I just get excited even being on this podcast and on this, just thinking about what Christian wholesalers could do. It's not just what they're doing, but what could be done over the course of the next 3, 5, 10 years to make that level of impact. I had the privilege and opportunity to spend over a decade with Rick Warren, who was not only a best-selling author, but a local pastor, as well as a national figure on the cover of Time magazine multiple times. And really, Rick would talk about in private, his pinnacle moments were spending his time with Tom Paterson, going through a life plan, as well as a strategic operating plan for Saddleback Church. And what we were able to witness and watch was, as those processes seeped into Rick's fabric, was the notion that he would one day write a book talking about understanding your purpose and understanding what it looks like to have something like a life plan. And in his context, he called that book The Purpose-Driven Life. And within the first decade of that book, it became the best-selling hardback nonfiction book in American history, with 53 some million books, million copies sold at that time, with journals and all of these other ancillary things. But at the root of it all was truly Rick understanding his DNA and his purpose and why he existed and what he was talented to do and what he wasn't talented to do. And just to release the rest and go for that. And then also to be a part of the purpose-driven church movement that Rick created along with Saddleback Church, that had personally one-on-one trained over 400,000 international leaders. And it was based around the idea of strategic planning and how do we strategically operationalize a movement where souls are invested here and where individuals' lives truly matter. And how can we sequentially bring somebody along in their journey of faith? And all of that, again, was rooted back into the very thing that I have the privilege to be a part of now, which is the Paterson Group, and to realize that generation after generation, new movements will be formed that'll help shape and transform lives. And that's why I think I'm so excited not only to share the story, but to think about what the stories will be in the days ahead through the work that you guys are doing.
Oh man, I love that. Thank you both for sharing those stories. And that really is what Kingdom Wholesaler is about, right? We're just trying to bring encouragement and some life and activate this hidden army that we believe is ready to impact. Some are already doing it, but just having a moment to be reminded of that and join into this wider movement of the army of God really advancing the kingdom through all vocations, all arenas around the world. This is just an exciting conversation. I would say this: if you're a financial wholesaler listening in today, take advantage, reach out to the Paterson Group, pull back, sharpen your axe a little bit, get clear, get some orientation as far as what maybe this next leg of the journey looks like. It will pay dividends. You're hearing the stories about it. But Jason, Scott, if our audience wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Our website's easy to get to. It's literally Paterson with one T, Paterson group.com. Very easy to get through us that way. You can email Scott or I hit our website, or direct email is easy. We're highly relational. We don't have a bunch of layers. You're not going into some automated system. Like, you'll get to a human being really quickly, and we're going to see if we can help you.
Well, we had a great time. Thank you, Jason, Scott, and Mark, and we're certainly going to do this again. Thank you for joining us. Whether you're new to wholesaling or a seasoned pro, Kingdom Wholesalers is here to encourage, equip, and empower you to lead boldly for Christ. Welcome to the movement.